At about 2 o'clock, Pickett asked if his men should go forward. Longstreet, convinced the charge was folly, unable to bring himself to speak, only nodded.
If you stop to think about it, it would have been much harder not to go than to go. It would have taken a great deal of courage to say, Marse Robert, I ain't going. Nobody's got that much courage.
Now Pickett gave the order. Up, men, and to your posts. Don't forget today that you are from old Virginia. At 3 o'clock, divisions, 13,000 men, started out of the woods toward the stone wall 1.5 miles away at a brisk, steady pace, covering about 100 yards a minute. They were silent as they marched, forbidden this time to fire or even to give the rebel yell until they were on top of the enemy.
More than half a mile their front extends, man touching man, rank pressing rank. The red flags wave, their horsemen gallop up and down. The arms of 13,000 men, barrel and bayonet, gleam in the sun. A sloping forest of flashing steel. Right on they move, as with one soul. None on that crest now need be told. The enemy is advancing. Every eye could see his legions, an overwhelming, resistless tide, an ocean of armed men sweeping upon us. All was orderly and still upon our crest, no noise and no confusion. General Gibbon rode down the lines, cool and calm, and in an unimpassioned voice, he said to the men, "Do not hurry, men, and fire too fast. Let them come up close before you fire, and then aim slow."
It was, a Union colonel recalled, the most beautiful thing I ever saw. Suddenly, the Union artillery on Cemetery Ridge and Little Round Top opened fire, and a great moan went up from the Confederate line. We could not help hitting them at every shot, a Federal officer recalled. As many as 10 men at a time were destroyed by a single bursting shell. A Confederate lieutenant cried out to his men, "Home, boys, home. Remember, home is over beyond those hills." The waiting Union troops began chanting, "Fredericksburg, Fredericksburg, Fredericksburg." When the first Southerners came within 200 yards, Union General Alexander Hayes told his men to fire. 11 cannon and 1,700 muskets went off at once. Entire regiments disappeared.
The rebel lines were at once enveloped in a dense cloud of dust. Arms, heads, blankets, guns, and knapsacks were tossed into the clear air.
Still, the Confederates came on. They reached the Union line at one place only, a crook in the stone wall known as the Angle.
Seconds are centuries, minutes, ages. Men fire into each other's faces not 5 feet apart. There are bayonet thrusts, saber strokes, pistol shots, men going down on their hands and knees, spinning round like tops, throwing out their arms, gulping blood, falling, legless, armless, headless. There are ghastly heaps of dead men.
to foot, body to body, and man to man, they struggled and pushed and strived and killed. The mass of wounded and heaps of dead tangled their feet. And underneath the trampling mass, wounded men who could no longer stand fought, drowned in sweat, black with powder, red with blood.
The Confederates were led by General Lewis A. Armstead. He stepped over the wall waving his hat on his sword and seized a Union battery before he was shot down. All the Confederates who breached the wall were killed or captured. The Union line held. Pickett's charge had failed. Lee's army would never again penetrate so far into Northern Territory.
Cheer after cheer rose from the triumphant boys in blue, echoing from Round Top, from Cemetery Hill, resounding in the vale below, making the very heavens throb. Private Jesse Young.
As the rebels staggered back, Lee rode out to meet them. "All this has been my fault," he told them.
Probably his finest hour was after the repulse of Pickett's charge. He walked out into the field, met the men retreating, and said, "It is all my fault." And he told them that. He wrote to the government, to Jefferson Davis, and said it was all my fault. I asked more of men than should have been asked of them.
Pickett was horrified. When told to rally his division for a possible Union counterattack, Pickett answered, "General Lee, I have no division now." Pickett never forgave Lee. Years later, he said, "That old man had my division slaughtered."
Gettysburg was the price the South paid for having R.E. Lee. That was the mistake he made, the mistake of all mistakes.
$6,500 men had fallen or been captured, half of those who marched out of the woods. All 15 regimental commanders had been hit. So had 16 of 17 field officers, 3 brigadier generals, and 8 colonels. Every one of the University Grays, a company made up of students from the University of Mississippi, had been killed or wounded.